What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the next episode of the Automotive Artistry Podcast. This next episode is episode 55, and it actually continues part of our series at the Detroit Autorama. This one's going to be definitely on the metal shaping side because the two guests that I decided to pair together, which I think is a great back-to-back episode. There's a lot of information here when it comes to metal shaping. And even the car building side of it, because we got a unique aspect to this one that I really enjoyed. And the first guest is a name that's been in the industry for quite some time, and that is Fay Butler. So Fay Butler has spent a good portion of his life understanding metal, how it works, the science behind it. And we go over some stuff like that, but I was really more interested in where all this information went. There's stuff that's out there, but when I really think of the metal shaping world, and especially even in my own career, there's a lot of places that don't really see the equipment that's out there, the knowledge that's out there, and Fay's seen it all. So to be able to pick his brain on where a lot of this stuff has gone, how we can get more information, and just some of the understanding that he knows that gets pretty scientific. So Fay, thank you for being a part of the podcast. It really means a lot that you took the time to have a conversation. It means a lot, and I think this will help a lot of people as well. And the second part to this episode is with Trent Lewis, which if that name sounds familiar, he's been on the podcast before. If you do the search on our podcast page on Spotify, you should be able to find Trent Lewis on there. And this time, we're joined with what I thought was a really unique part of this episode we're joined by Mike Markin. And Mike actually is both a friend and client of Trent. And you get to hear their story, how a lot of that came together, and to the point that they were able to build a grade 8 contender, which says a lot. And so on this part of the episode, you're going to get to see an aspect from client, friendship, and building a car that makes it into the grade 8. That's a really cool aspect there. So you actually get to see his perspective from our industry. So this was a really fun part of the episode. I'm really happy to pair these two together. I think they go great. And again, I really want to thank BASF for hosting us in their booth, because without that, it wouldn't have been possible to put this together. And I know Tina knows I've brought her name up before, but as someone who represents BASF, you really show that BASF cares about the people that are in the industry. And so thank you again for that. Anyways, this is going to be the second part of a 3-part series. If you didn't catch the first part, that was with my friends Franny Drummond and Corey Morose. And that was such a fun episode. That episode, once we had that one, it kind of messed me up a little bit on the other episodes after that. And so it was hard to kind of navigate through that when someone hit the power cord while we were recording. But there's a funny part in that episode too, so you can check that out and you can actually see when it actually happens. So if you didn't check that episode out before this one, you can check out part 1. That was another fun one. Part 3, that'll be coming up in a couple weeks. I'm still working on that. But again, this was so much fun. I'm really happy for everyone that was a part of this. And I think these episodes are going to be great for any aspect that you're into. The first part of this one was custom paint. We're going into metal shaping and car building. And you can also even check out the episode with Detroit Metal Shaping. That one was outside of the show, but it was on our last day. So there's a lot to these episodes that I enjoyed all of it. And thank you to everyone who was a part of it. Now let's get started on this episode. Butler. pleasure. Thank you for being on the podcast. It
Yes, Miguel. Yes.
we were talking not too long ago about one of the subjects I wanted to talk to you about is how metal shaping has changed in the industry. Uh, where we lost a lot of the knowledge and how it's coming back now. Because now I look at shops like Dutch Boys Hot Rods, a beautiful car they have here, and you're seeing a lot more of the metal shaping techniques starting to come back into our industry. But at least from my point of view, I've seen it disappear for a long time, especially in my earlier days of my career. And you've been around to see where a lot of these ebbs and flows, where the information comes out from. In your earlier days were a lot of the coach building and metal shaping techniques pretty available out there, or was it hard to get that information?
Yeah, it was pretty much dead coming out of World War II.
Okay.
I have a power hammer that I bought from the Rolston Body Company.
Mm-hmm.
They were in Manhattan. They bought the hammer originally in 27, and they still owned it. I bought it in, I think it was like 76.
Okay.
And when I bought it, the owner of the company, who was the son of Rudolf Kruder, that was chief designer for Rolston coach-built cars, he said that they had 4 or 5 Packards on the floor that they were coach building. When the war broke out, they put them in storage.
Mm-hmm.
When the war was over, they brought them back in and finished them, but they couldn't get chassis anymore because there was such a demand for cars.
Wow.
So the coach build industry it was the end at World War II.
Okay. So then, equipment like that, whether it was big cast English wheels, pull maxes.
Well, the Pullmax wasn't really used in the industry.
Okay.
That was a relatively new machine that came in. Pullmax patented the nibbling process, which was like machining an edge to give you a true blank.
Okay.
So they were really used as blanking machines. And in the 60s, they realized they could expand the machine.
Mm-hmm.
And so they turned it into sort of a universal sheet metal machine that mills could have to making guards and putting louvers in and schools and also for cutting efficiently small quantities of blanks.
Okay.
And when, plasma cutters and all that type of stuff came in, the Pullmax was done.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
So then the earlier machines, we're talking English wheels, planishing hammers. What was the earlier equipment?
Yeah, well, the English wheel was never accepted by Americans. It was too slow. The problem with the English wheel is it doesn't matter how big a machine you put together, you're still dealing with a 1/16th horsepower human.
Okay.
And so that's all it will develop. An athlete can sprint for a 1/4 horsepower for a short distance, but you can't get really any more than a 1/4 horsepower.
Okay.
And when I started in the the early 70s, that's when I first saw the power hammer, was when I was in college. I was aware that there were wheels, and I pursued that. But what I didn't like about the wheel was a human-powered machine will never be as productive as a machine with a 1 or 2 or 3 horsepower motor.
Okay.
So I just completely discounted the wheel.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I met John Glover that I realized my dislike for the wheel was unfounded.
Okay.
That the wheel is an efficient way of changing the thickness if you know what a compound curve is.
Yes. Yeah.
So I have John Glover's personal wheel now.
Wow.
He was really he started the fabricated wheel and he developed the surfaces. He passed away a year ago or so, in his late 90s.
Yeah. So then, I don't know enough about this subject, so I'm interested to see, where we lead off into some of the older, when we talk about the cast English wheels. Was that mainly like a European? Was that where a lot of that started?
Yes. It's funny that the British started the Industrial Revolution, in the 1840s. And even though they were, some of the first people to realize the importance of machines, they still kept this history of sort of hand work.
Yeah.
And I think since they were still coach buildings stuff in Europe post World War II, the wheel became recognizable, and the hammer had just lost. Nobody knew what a hammer was.
Wow.
So I didn't know till I went to Pennsylvania. There was a shop down there called Amesley's Auto Body Shop. This was in the early 70s when I was in college. And I saw a power hammer.
Yeah.
And they were building car bodies, usually stuff in the 30s. And I said to myself, when I get out of college, that's where I'm going.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what I did. Yeah. So the hammer was really gone after World War II.
Okay.
And I think it survived because they were so heavy. They weren't easy to throw away.
Yeah, yeah.
So they managed that 20, 30 years when, maybe longer, when nobody was using them. And air hammers, are fairly recent also because they didn't really use air tools till after World War II.
Okay. A lot of the planishing hammers, I've seen a lot of these big machines, a lot, that, they stand pretty tall. It's a heavy piece of equipment. But I've also seen a lot of the ones that are mounted to like a piece of wood, on a wall. Is there a main difference between having those two different setups?
It's just when you go back to World War II or earlier, wood was a more usable material. There were sawmills, and so it was just easy to saw out an 18 by 18 or a 2-foot, section of wood, and then mount it to, wood is cellulose. It's long, stringy fibers. It's aniscopic in that it shrinks and swells 90 degrees to the annual rings, and then it's hygroscopic where it gives off and takes on moisture with the surrounding area. End grain is 12 to 15 times quicker in transferring moisture. That's why you have to paint the end grains of material. So wood was just a usable material.
Okay, so there's not necessarily a benefit or anything like that. It was just convenient, basically.
Just convenient. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, kind of coming back to, the knowledge and the equipment coming back into our industry right now. And I say that because I feel like a lot of what you could say is hot rod shops or, custom building shops. There was a long time where, filler replaced metalwork. And so, again, when you get to the level of cars like this, you have to build that panel. And, you're changing the geometry on the car, you're changing wheelbase. There's so many things that you're doing to modify these cars that you need to bring I don't know if it's, for lack of a better term, these coach building techniques to be able to create these panels properly and then fine tune them to the point where maybe you're using little material, little body filler, or not as much relying on a lot of body filler for these panels.
Well, you could, every shape that you need has already been made and it's in a junkyard.
Yeah.
It's finding that shape and cutting it out. There's a guy named Denny Hapey who maybe a dozen years ago built, he called it a tribute car. And what he wanted to do was to find all the shapes in a junkyard. So he built the whole car without doing any metal shaping, but assembling the pieces that were already made.
Wow.
But you would have to find them, and so it becomes better to have the equipment to actually be able to make the pieces that you need. Yeah. And the problem with the power hammer is whenever you move to power, you have to have a better plan.
Okay.
So the good thing about a wheel is you don't get into trouble as far because it's tiring. You run out of gas, so you slow down. You have to check pieces. The power hammer, you can fall asleep on the pedal, and when you wake up, you're in a different galaxy. So here goes the trash can,
Yeah.
the part's in the dumpster and now you're starting over. So you need a better plan.
Now, in that same realm, we've brought up, or you've brought up, the use of the word shape. I feel like a lot of people are understanding or trying to understand shape on a car, whether it's understanding compound curves, reverse curves, all these different things, looking at highlights. Where did this information, where can people find information? I know you have some books and stuff like that, but
Well, many of these ideas were transferred through a traditional apprentice system.
okay,
And when you're in the 30s, if you try to find a book on repairing a 30s vintage car, they didn't have it.
Yeah.
You had Dyke's manuals that would give you some technical information, but at the beginning of a chapter, say on the electrical systems of a car, they would teach you the principles of charging, of electricity, and then you would apply that to problem solving. If you went to the suspension, it would talk about the Ackermann principle and geometry of caster and camber and how that affects, and then you would apply that. And so, the idea of specific technical manuals, that's a fairly recent thing after World War II.
Okay.
So we really don't have that information. I worked with Yoda. They built a power hammer maybe 10 years ago, and I went out and helped them set it up and run it. It was one of the first hammers they had made, and no one in the shop could remember making hammers.
Wow.
And I went through their drawings, and they had no drawings for the surface of a die. So
wow,
it was really all transferred through apprentice programs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you say a lot of this information is really niche at this point? Is it?
Well, when I started, I wanted it to be more of a science than an art.
Yeah.
So I started fooling around with what a die is, and I realized you couldn't use flats because the ram didn't move within the gib accurate enough, and so you would get a D-shaped hit or a thumbnail hit. And so I quickly figured out if you had a radius, wherever you would hit on the radius, you would get a round contact.
Okay.
So from there, I started fooling around. Well, what would a set of dies be? You could have 50 dies, but what was the minimum amount? So I picked the base 12 system because you can break the numbers up 3, 4, 6, 12. It's normal numbers that we're used to, as opposed to the base 10 system that you'd wind up with like 2.5, 5, 7.5. Those wouldn't be easy numbers. So within that base 12 system, I figured out that you only needed a few dies to be able to make all the shapes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I started using that. And then I realized I couldn't tell which die to pick. And so I needed a gauge to do that. And there's not a gauge that I'm aware of that's made between machinist radius gauges that stop at around a 1/2 inch and then sweeps that are at 42-inch radius.
Okay.
So I made a little radius gauge that I could use to check panels and then choose a die. And it worked very efficiently. I'm pleased that it's sort of become a standard and people copy it now. So then they don't have to worry about the tooling. They can concentrate on figuring out how to operate it.
It sounds like you spent a lot of time digging into this science for yourself.
Yes. It was, all the metal shapers. There was California Metal Shaping that really was the last professional shop using power hammers the way it was during the coach building days.
Okay.
I did meet Bill Honda, who owned California Metal Shaping back in the 70s, and he invited me out to the shop. But I was broke. Traveling was out of the question for me. So, I just chained myself to the equipment and figured out. But I had a lot of help. There was a fellow, John Richards. He was retired. This was in the 70s, and he was a in the experimental welding division at Pratt & Whitney.
Okay.
And so he provided me with ideas of how to use the TIG process, because I was gas welding everything together.
Okay.
And so he got me into a more scientific approach, using right-sized tungstens and small filler rods. And yeah, so, none of this we can do on our own.
Yeah.
We have to, and I worked in Pennsylvania at the shop for a year and a half. I think it was 75, 76. And they had a power hammer. But the interesting thing to me was it had one die in it. I had no idea how to change it. Nobody in the shop knew.
Yeah.
The hammer was from Auburn. It
Okay.
had built the Auburn cars.
Yeah.
And it was a low crown die. We used it for doing door skins. And that was mounted to a post that would shake. And
So you really had to dig down and figure a lot on your own.
yes, with the help of a lot of people in other fields that allowed me to take the ideas from other fields and realize I could apply it to the metal shaping field. Yes.
So when you're saying, I know you mentioned Pratt Whitney, are we talking like the airline industry? Is that where a lot of shaping was done back then?
They were using hammers as a second operation, but I think the aircraft industry might have used them a little later into the 50s.
Okay.
But I think by the 50s it was pretty much gone.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like I said, that's all stuff that I really do think it's important for people to, if you're understanding metal, just understanding the equipment that we started with, what works for the application that you're you're doing.
Well, Pettengill really developed the power hammer, and they were a German company in Amesbury, Mass. Amesbury, Mass was the center of coach building industry.
Okay.
And they had a summer event that was the equivalent of the Detroit Auto Show to unveil new carriages annually. And so Pettengill made woodworking equipment for making the spokes for the wheels. And if you go through the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, they have a number of Pettengill's machines there for the carriage industry that are made out of wood, painted green. And when cars started coming in, you had the option of a wood body that wasn't very durable in holding paint. You would sculpture a wood body.
Yeah.
You could clad it with steel, but if you did, it was simple shapes. You didn't have compound curves. So if you wanted a compound curve, you went with sheet aluminum and you would hand hammer it. But you couldn't weld it, so they would put moldings over the seams, and it wasn't that durable. There was a company, Pierce Arrow, that built cast aluminum bodies, but that was a really exceptional thing. So it's not surprising that a company in Amesbury, Mass, where they were building bodies now for the automobile industry, would have developed the power hammer to more efficiently change the thickness to make compound curve shapes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Pettengill is still building machines, I believe, right?
Yes. There are some individuals. I don't know the name of them. It's Mike Cleaves down in, I think it's Morristown, the Carolinas. Yes, they've reproduced the hammer. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. And there are other options around. It's really just throwing a weight. It's just, energy, F equals ma, force is mass times acceleration. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome.
It's, as I said, it's very much an American tool.
Yeah.
In that, we'll put a V8 motor on a weed whacker if we could.
Yeah. That's no joke right there. That's real. There's probably one around the show here somewhere.
Yeah.
So, you've been coming to this show for years, and you also help judge the best metal at the show.
Yes, I created an award. It's over 20 years ago. It's called the Fay Butler Best Metal Award, and it's a 6-inch tall bronze casting of a power hammer.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yes, it's to encourage people to do their own work. And, many of us, when we start this trade, it's a solitary trade. You're
Yeah.
working alone. Often your parents or your spouse don't understand what you're doing. They would rather see you, I don't know, work at a car dealership
Yeah.
or do something else. And there isn't a model. And so I'm trying to just encourage people that, you can make a living in other ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's
Yeah.
that's part of the podcast. That's a message I like to throw out there too, because there's so many different aspects to what we do. And the information there's more information coming out there, and people can work at a shop and be proud of the thing that they built with their hands.
Well, I encourage people, if you get into a material, if you can go back to the atom and learn the structure of the material from the atomic side, that can be a big advantage in problem solving.
Okay.
Metals are a crystalline structure. Uh, they they're not like paints that are molecules. They're atoms packed closely together, and that's what allows us the formability of metals. And then as you're forming them, you use up the slip systems that are there, and you gain strengthening mechanisms. And knowing all that can help you to pick filler rods when you're welding. It can understand why certain metals or certain methods pick up more strength as you're hammering. So I've always promoted learning science. Yeah. And that's what we should do.
Yeah.
That's what the Germans do. The Germans have an educational system where if you want to work with your hands, you learn the science. And in Germany, they respect craftsmen a lot more than we do in the U.S.
Yeah.
That's why we have, BMWs, Audis, Bosch appliances, the name goes on, the list goes on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think this podcast, we're going to help bring that back and bring people to be, proud of this type of work and show that it is an industry that you can make a living on, and that it's respectable, and that there are people like yourself who have the information to show people that we can do this right. We can build these things, and again, create something that it's proper, it looks right, it's well made. And I really do believe that the custom side of our industry, I think it represents a lot of American manufacturing, a lot of where we are as an industry. You see people that like Roadster Shop. These guys are building chassis. They're manufacturing these custom chassis for all these different types of cars. And when I see stuff like that, it really shows that there is a part of American manufacturing that's strong. And I wish more people who, maybe if they're not in the industry, at least understood that, there's people that are machining things they're pretty amazing.
Well, I think your generation and younger really have an interest in connecting with your hands.
Yeah.
And I think it's that you don't see it because it's a solitary endeavor.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, you have a book, right, that has a lot of this information on metal shaping.
Yes, I wrote 3 books, one on the Pullmax, one on air hammers.
Yeah.
They're very visual, and I wrote a book on the process.
Okay.
And you can get them on my website at just my name, faybutler.com, if anybody's interested.
That's perfect.
Yeah, a lot of that information is now assimilated, but I do have it in one spot.
Okay,
yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you'd want for people to find your information? Is faybutler.com your main source?
Yeah, I have a seminar program. I've been running it since '89. I think I've had like 7,000 people come through.
Wow.
I spent 8 winters in the GM Proving Grounds, and the list just goes on. And I still offer it today. I only do one-on-ones.
Okay.
But you don't have to take my seminar to call me if you have a question or problem or something.
Awesome.
I try to make myself available.
Oh, that's that. I think a lot of people appreciate that. I know you've helped a lot of people, do great things in our industry.
Well, you can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
You need older, wise eyes to help.
Yeah.
You're the hope. You're the hope, Miguel. You're the hope for the future. Getting people together. Yeah. I think you're doing a good job.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah.
Fay.
Okay,
Thank
Miguel.
you for your time. This was awesome, and I think even the 30 minutes that we talked, I think people are going to get a lot out of it. And go faybutler.com, and you can find a lot more information. If you love metal shaping and that kind of work, it is a resource that is invaluable. So thank you again.
Thank you, Miguel.
All right. I'm very grateful to have the two of you here. I'll do a little introduction. We got Trent Lewis here, right? And
Yes.
you have Midwest Metalworks. is your
Midwest
shop?
Metalworks out of Eau Claire, Wisconsin,
Yeah.
or just south of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. So, been in business since 2009. So, got married, bought a shop, started a business all in the same day. So,
And we
yeah.
actually did a podcast episode later in the year last year.
Yep.
And so, if anybody, whoever's listening, you can always go back to that episode. Just look up Trent Lewis on there.
Yeah, that was a
And,
blast.
Yeah, it was fun. It
Yep.
was great to get to know you then.
Oh, for sure.
And you have a friend and customer.
Yep.
If you
I'm
wanna-
Mike Markin. I'm also from Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And I got to know Trent on our other first project that we brought out here 10 years ago and got
Wow.
a grade 8 spot, 38 gram. And the way I met Trent was he came to a car club meeting. I was looking for somebody, and he was making this not video presentation, but screen presentation on what he was doing, and he was looking for clients and customers. And I got done with that presentation. I was impressed, and I think 2 weeks later I called him and said, "You want to get together?" And we built
awesome.
a beautiful car.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was, I think we figured it was like 2010,
2010,
I think.
yes.
So, about a little over a year into my business, and I was 28 at the time. And yeah, getting called in to assist with a car that was going to get built for the Detroit Autorama was, it's pretty mind blowing at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
It's still hard to even, wrestle with the thought of doing that at that age and
Yeah.
everything. But, you dive into it with both feet, and it was a great project to be involved in. Really pushed your limits, and grateful to be a part of
Yeah.
it, to Mike and Pat, his wife, and she's just as enthusiastic about it as he is, and we've got a great relationship, and we've done other cars, for him. We did a DeSoto for him here this last year. That's just getting wrapped up with paint and going through final assembly. So,
Well, see that, and what I'm excited to talk to the two of you about here is because I don't often get to have a podcast with, the builder and the customer who's become a friend, and that's a great perspective for a lot of people because there's a lot of builders here, and a lot of them have developed that relationship, and when you go onto these builds, it's a journey.
Truly.
From your perspective, what was your background as far as like understanding the Riddler cars, and was this a big learning curve for you?
Oh yeah, it was way
Yeah.
out of my league. Man. So I bought this 38 gram about 2008 because I wanted a hot rod and I'd never had one before. And I just set it in my storage building and let it set until about 2010. And somebody from the car club that I belonged to said, "Hey, if you really want to get some ideas, you ought to go to the Detroit Autorama because it's the greatest hot rod show in the country." I didn't even heard of it. So I hoofed it over here with another fellow, and we took a look around. And when I first walked in the door, there was two Riddler grade 8 type cars sitting there, and it's like, what in the world is this?
Yeah.
I was just totally blown away. And we walked around. We spent the weekend looking at all the cars, talking to some of the builders. And I got done. I said, I want to get into that competition. I had absolutely no idea what the commitment was, other than I knew it was going to be a few nickels more than I was really expecting. But and that's just how I am. Is once I want to do something, I tend to go very deep and narrow with it. And that kind of so I got back to Eau Claire and said, well, we're going to do something a little bit more than just a street around the neighborhood. So we jumped in, and it was a journey.
How was the process of finding that right person? Like, did you meet Trent fairly quickly?
So we started the build in February, like shortly after the. Actually, we had kind of gotten started on it. So it was a 4-door sedan, and we're converting it into 2-door coupe. Graham had an idea when they were building that they were going to do a 2-door coupe, but they didn't. And I thought, well, we're going to build the first one. And so that was kind of the idea. And I was working I've got a friend that has a shop. It's pretty much mechanical. And he had one employee, and we knew that we just didn't have the talent. So that's where the search came from. And then it's like, Trent just fell into my lap. It's like, I got to get this guy.
Yeah.
And we've got great synergy. It was always fun.
Yeah.
It was fun working with it.
Yep. I think we've got a kind of the same approach to it. We're very, Mike's a numbers guy. He likes organization, stuff planned out, and I'm the same way. I've got kind of a left brain, right brain kind of thing going on. So you got to have the creative aspect of it, and that's maybe where I pick up where Mike's got a vision. He just needs to see it through and see how that stuff evolves. So we play that very well together, and I think the communication, the professionalism bringing forward with it, and we understand the commitment of both parties, on it, and it goes both ways. There's a give and take on all that stuff, and it's it's not necessarily all sunshine and rainbows. There is some difficulties and stuff in there, but we've worked through those things, and I think it's made the relationship better too. I think we've got a better understanding of each other, it's been great to come back here to this show as spectators and see what's out there. What's changed since we've been here, and things like that. So it's it's always great to come out to Detroit.
Yeah.
So and meet up with some people that talk to and some other vendors and some other builders and stuff like that, and it's a great community. So
and in the build process, and did you know anything about metalwork, body, or was this everything was new to you?
No, it wasn't really new to me. I got into restoring cars. I've restored a number of cars before that, but never really built a hot rod before. I came late into the whole car concept thing. I was in the investment management business before I started actually getting into cars. And my wife and I have a second marriage. We married in 2000. And I came home about a year and a half into the marriage, and I said, I think I figured out what I want to do in retirement. And she asked me what, and I said, I want to restore old cars. And she looked at me, she said, you have never shown any interest in cars. And I said, well, I bought 3 today. So we got started that way and started restoring some cars, and I have some shops. I don't do that type of work, I've learned how to do things. I've learned how to tear a car apart, how to put it back together, how to do electrical wiring and things like that, but I don't do body paint and all that other really important stuff that goes with it. But this is a whole different level. You just want to be creative and work with somebody that's really talented and creative and try to bring the dream to fruition is really what you want to do.
Well, there's a big difference between a driver quality car, right?
Yes.
And a car that's going to compete for a competition like this.
Right.
Yep.
And I love to compete.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, it's just, wanting to perform at a high level. You've been successful in your occupation, your business, and, you want to do something, but you want to do it right.
Yeah.
You want to see it through all the way. and push yourself in that way. And you know, because if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, you know. So it gets to be kind of daunting, you know, when you're looking at it at big picture. And I've had this conversation the last couple of weeks with a few people, and it's like, you know, like eating an elephant. You take it one bite at a time, you know, kind of thing, and you break it down into manageable areas and plan for everything, and then you got to know how to delegate the work to the rest of the team, and you know, things like that, and use everybody's strengths, and so it's there's a lot of things to cover. It's not just, you know, building a panel and stuff like that. It's just planning everything out, keeping the big picture in mind, but breaking it down where you're not going to just drive yourself crazy too.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, and wanting to do things right, you know, in your process of learning, you know, the shaping, the metal shaping side, or, you know, these different aspects that are really important. There's a lot of shops you can go to, and they're all going to do it a different way.
Yes.
And obviously the quality level for when you're going to compete for these events like this, that line becomes much more strict.
Yep.
And that's where, you know, someone like yourself, you know, you have your level of what strict means to you. And, you know, I think I feel like that's a hard one to translate sometimes between the builder, you know, and the customer is like, yeah, I could use all this body filler and sculpt out a whole whatever it is.
Yep.
You know, but, you know, like the car behind us, the Dutch boys did.
Yeah, amazing car.
It's you know, to do the kind of work that's done to that car and reach that level, yeah, you're going to have to build panels from scratch.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to have, you know, there's an approach that, you know, the ordinary just doesn't work at this point anymore.
Nope, it doesn't.
You know?
Yeah, you got to take a long view on building these cars. And I think a lot of guys that I've talked to in the past, and the long view requires building things that you don't have available to you and building them to the level that you want. But a lot of guys want to start cars like this, and their time horizon in their mind is out there, but in reality, they're impatient. They can't do it, and they underestimate what it takes to build a car like this and stay with it, see it through.
Yep. Yeah, you gotta be able to stay the course, you know, on that stuff, and and then you gotta pick your battles too. You know, even I'm sure on a car like this, there's things that, you know, they said, what we know we're going to be doing this, but there's other areas where it's not going to require that same amount of attention. You know, you're getting into the stuff with the interior, or the trunk, or, you know, things like that, and so yeah, you gotta kind of know where you want to really focus your attention and let things really shine through, and other ones where you can still do an excellent job, but nothing needs to be like over the top too. And so.
Yeah. And learning through that process. How long did that car you guys built take?
6 years.
Yeah.
6 years. Yeah.
It was 6 years, and it wasn't part-time work. It was full-time people on it the whole 6 years.
And that's 6 years. What a lot of people don't understand too is, you know, that's 6 years of, you know, improving the skill set, changing ideas, going, oh, yeah, we thought this was going to look good, but now let's change this up.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, I think we did. Change-wise, like during the metalwork and mock-up phase that I was involved with, that was like a 3-year process, and I think we might have changed like some front frame rails that we had bent up just to get us a little bit more clearance with the wheel, tire, stuff like that, and then how we did the build out with the inner fenders, and we did some caps on the backside for like the headlights, and how all that stuff worked together and played together, and so I think we did some changes there, but I think for the most part there wasn't too much during that metal.
I don't think there was a lot
phase
either, because one of the things about the collaboration is that we would be looking at what was going to be done. And then if we did want to try to make a decision about something changing, you always got to be looking at, well, if I change this, what else in that whole car is going to change? Not only what we've done, but also going forward on it. And good planning and having a vision on it kind of can minimize that a lot. And Trent brought that to the table a lot.
That's awesome.
Yep, and I think, because we had like a huge dry eraser 1 month calendar, and I was up on that thing at the beginning and the end of every day, going and marking off stuff and delegating what we were going to be working on, stuff like that. And then it gives you a target for that day or that week, and where you can go up, and because I think you were coming down like every day, checking on everything and meeting, and that was highly important at that time, because it was we're chartering all new waters for all of us. So just to make sure that nothing was getting lost in translation, and we're all on the same page moving forward, because we're having to schedule some stuff out, working with some vendors, working with machinists, designers. We got interior guys involved, early on. And then same with, we ended up bringing a guy in to help doing mechanical mock-up and doing some of the plumbing and stuff like that, and to help navigate through some of.
Let's take a quick break from this episode. I'm excited to say that this is a paid ad from our friends over at Dynabrade. Look, both their automotive refinish and detailing divisions have earned such a great reputation in our industry. From their U.S. factory in Buffalo, New York, they're creating the solutions we need in automotive tools, from metalwork, bodywork, working on clear coat, plastics. They have the tools that are extremely well made, that cover the bases that we need as practitioners in automotive. Through their nationwide network of professional warehouses and jobbers, they can provide the equipment you need. Visit dynabrade.com for more information today.
The product and stuff like that was a little bit new to us, that I wasn't familiar with. So yeah, there's a lot of aspects, a lot of pieces in the puzzle that you're constantly moving around. Like what you think is going to happen this morning at 8 a.m. by the end of the day, we're changing things around. It didn't happen very often, but you've got to kind of expect to do those kinds of things.
Expect the unexpected and move with it.
Yep. Yes, absolutely.
Yep. You got to be a problem solver.
And it sounds like you were part of the team, essentially.
Yes.
And I say that you're the person who's it's your car, it's your it's your dream and everything like that. But to work together like that and translate what he's looking for and actually create that, that takes a lot of effort right there.
Yeah. I was really fortunate.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I want to, do my best to, meet the expectations, or, and even go a little bit beyond that, and if that means I got to put in some of my own time to do that, I'm willing to do that too, because it's a team effort, and, we're going to win as a team. So I think that's important to have that, approach to it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of builders that I've talked to, and it's the same mentality of that.
Yeah.
There's a give and a take, and you're going to put in a lot to this. All of you are,
It's a long commitment.
It's a lot of effort, to build a car, to want to even make the grade 8, that's a lot of effort right there.
It is.
And
it's a big milestone.
To be able to work together like that and have that relationship, that puts you way ahead of a lot of people who aren't doing that. I mean, that's how was your guys' relationship throughout the process? Is this something that really brought you guys together?
I think so. Yeah. Yep. And I think now too, coming back as a spectator and looking at this stuff, and talking about it and bringing up some of the memories, because we were trying to figure out, well, how did it all start? And it's been so many years that you kind of forget about it, and so it was great to relive that stuff and share those memories and be grateful for all of that stuff, and then the impact that it had, and what Mike went on to do with the car after that, taking it to all the shows and taking it out to SEMA, to Battle of the Builders, and he's standing up there with Troy and the guys from the Roadster Shop, and all these other big names, and here we are from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and throwing the same hat and the same ring, it's kind of crazy to think about. I was just talking to my wife about that last night, and so she's asking me how the the show was and how everything was going, and so I said, yeah, we're meeting some people and some other builders and stuff, and I'm like, it's just crazy to think about that, because I don't consider myself like at that, even though I think I need to give myself maybe a little bit more credit where credit's due, but I think keeping yourself humble, I think, is what keeps you hungry too, for your next builds and things like that. And you need that edge. And I think you need to think that, there's some, risk involved, and, I've got to really make sure I'm covering my bases on things like that, because I think that really helps you drive, your skill level, drive your impact on everything, and make sure that what you're putting out there is worthy.
Yeah. How was it? How was the feeling when you guys were able to show the car? Was that, you get all the way to that point and you're here, was the pressure on? Did you finally feel like a relief that we're here? Like, how did that affect you guys?
Mike's got a pretty good story about that. When you were awarded the grade 8, you said that you left the ground and you never touched the ground.
That's right. Yeah. It was like a rocket up in the air, and it was just an incredible experience. Second to none, really. It was just a blast. I just couldn't believe we made it. It was just like the first time I'd ever built a car, from scratch, and it's like, holy mackerel. And I don't know, you couldn't describe the feeling. I mean, it was tears of joy, truly. When we were staying at the hotel. I understood that on Friday when they were announcing it, that we couldn't get in as a builders until 11 o'clock. Well, it turned out somebody told me that, and they were actually here, and it was already, somebody called me and said, hey, where the heck are you? You've got to get over here. Yeah. And from Advanced Plating, one of the guys, Josh Mishler, gave me a call and said, hey, where are you? Well, I'm on the Sky Train here on my way over, and we got here, and we were just parked right up here front near the info area. It's like, holy mackerel, there's that flag. It was just awesome. It was.
And that's obviously you guys work together on this project, but you're helping facilitate that moment.
Oh yeah.
That's got to feel good for you too.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I was, excited for Mike and Pat and everybody involved, with that project, and it's years of working towards that goal, and it's just like, it's worth it, in the end to see all that stuff, and there's a relief, but there's an excitement about it, and what's to come. But then for me too, I'm always looking at like the next build, so it's like, okay, well, how are you going to top this one, kind of thing, and so it's constant momentum, I think, too, when you're looking at it, I mean, moving forward with the project too, for Mike to show that stuff and get the accolades that he's gotten with that is awesome, and proves the point of the car, but I think it's a learning experience and something that you can pass on to future projects and future endeavors and things. So
did that change your perspective as far as the end result of a project, like how you see it from the client's point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely learned that I need to be building something of my own too. So I know what the ask is for the client, the time commitment, and with that, the financials of it, and to also navigate through the new technology, the new parts, processes that are out right now. And so that's why I've always got a project of my own going on, whether I see that through to the end or not, or somebody wants to purchase that, finish it in the shop. I think it's important to understand that through the perspective of a client, like, how long is this taking? What adjustments do I need to be making to my processes? It gives me the ability to apply new techniques and new formulas and stuff like that to that. And well, I can't do this. I can't expect a client to go down this, pathway and stuff like that. And so you're kind of doing some troubleshooting, testing the waters on things. And because I would never feel comfortable like having a client pay for those kinds of experiences and stuff like that. And, things. So, so I think that's helped me, see that perspective and make sure I'm constantly doing that, on my own time. So
well, 6 years is a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of these builds, there's been ones that are 10 years, and so on. A lot changes in that time frame.
Oh yeah.
The technology changes, what's available, the techniques. So like you can be 6 years, you can be at that 5th year, and go, all those parts are outdated now.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And it's and whether it's just the way they look, or there's something better, and it's like, well, do you change for that? Do you need to make that adjustment? Like, was there anything like that came up for the build for you guys?
We maybe initially when you were doing the build, there was like because you weren't initially building it for the show, so there was maybe some off-the-shelf parts that were purchased and stuff like that. Okay, and once you start getting into it, and it's like, no, that production parts aren't gonna cut it, and so that's where you evolve through it and things like that. And that's not a uncommon approach to like these cars that stuff that we've talked about. It's like some of the cars that are in the grade 8, they're like, oh yeah, we never planned on doing this. We just kind of got the car done, and this show was ready. We were ready to unveil it. That's what they're saying, anyways. I mean, who knows what the real story is? But
they all have a story.
But yeah, I mean, and that's something that even on the other cars that I built, like my car that I'm working on now too, is I don't want to use like anything that's like super trendy or where it's like, oh yeah, tweed interior, that thing was built in the 90s. Stuff like that. So, we want it specific for the car, and what we really went for with the 38 gram was to make sure that it's going to be relevant when it's shown, but it's going to stay relevant and stay timeless even after that. So you could take it out now, even though it was built and shown 10 years ago. You could take it out now, and it's still gets the reaction that it gets. I think that's important to have that.
Yeah, and there's builds over the years that they left that impression behind. It doesn't matter how much time passes. You're still like, it just grabs your attention. Our friend of ours, Dave, built a green, I believe it was an Impala down there with a crazy custom paint job.
Oh yeah, the lowrider. That thing's cool.
Yeah, Corey did a lot of the graphics and everything, and it's one of those cars that I look at, I'm like, that's just cool. To me, it wins the cool award. It's no matter where you drive, people got a smile on their face because it's just cool.
Yep.
And depending whatever you're going after, I think that's if you can leave an impression like that, you're ahead. You're ahead.
Yep. Yeah, you want people to love it.
Yeah,
you really do, in their own way, whatever way.
Exactly. Yeah. And building these cars, it's got a little bit of his styling. It's got some of your personality. A lot of this stuff is it's a full circle thing. And I think it's really cool to, like I said, to be able to have you guys here today and give people a little bit of perspective from this side of things, because my podcast, a lot of what we do is have people like Trent on here, and we talk about the processes that the things we do, even the things outside of what we do too, but to get your perspective, it means a lot. So I really appreciate you coming out here.
It's been a pleasure.
And,
thanks, Miguel.
Guys, this is very cool.
Awesome.
Trent,
appreciate it.
I'm really glad to finally meet you in person.
No, it's good. Yeah, good to finally meet face to face, and so same good conversation.
For sure.
Yep.
Yeah. And maybe we'll get you down to Florida,
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah. We'll take you out to
we can do it in the winter. I'm kind of getting sick of winters in Wisconsin, so
as soon as we got into Detroit, all we did was look around and go, everything's dead.
Yeah.
Green to green.
Yeah, I
This
can't
is
wait
like
for the
a
green to come
heat
back.
wave
Yeah.
today, though, for
Yeah.
the Midwest.
For
so.
sure. Well, we got another episode down. Hey, thanks for listening to the Automotive Artistry. My name's Miguel, and let me tell you something about this podcast. First off, I'm really into this industry. I love all the aspects from metalwork, TIG welding, body work, paint work. I do this stuff myself for a living. I've been doing it for 23 plus years, at least at this moment, and this is stuff that I do every day. I'm really into it, and it's something that I think if you're listening to this, you probably are too. Maybe a couple aspects, maybe a lot of the same aspects that I'm into, but it really doesn't matter to me whether it's lowrider graphics on custom paintwork down to metal shaped parts, fabricated, custom panels, all like it really doesn't matter. That stuff really interests me. So the people that I have on this podcast, that's what they do. So some of them might cover certain aspects, but either way, every episode is going to be a little bit different. So, but I'm also very interested in the people behind the work that we do. So I really want you to get the perspective of what it takes to be someone who's been 20, 30 plus years in the industry and to be as successful as some of the people that are on the podcast. And throughout the success that they have, you're going to hear the stories of struggle. You're going to hear there's so much stuff between every single person. So even though you see someone, maybe it's someone who's been on the TV, maybe someone that you see that's got, just real popular on Instagram or whatever it is, you're going to see that this person's really a person and that they go through their struggles and that it's taken X amount of time for them to get to where they are today. And it doesn't have to be somebody who's really, 20 plus years in the industry. I've had guests on here who are 5 years, and you hear their story and how they're going along. So that's really the point of the podcast. I really want people to get to understand some of these aspects, and even down to we get pretty technical sometimes. My podcast is not about being ultra technical every single time, but I want it to be very relatable to the people that are watching and listening. Look, if you want to support the podcast, there's a couple ways that right now that we have. You can check out aworkingclass.bigcartel.com, and you can find some of our merchandise on there. Right now, it's some products from our old branding, but either way, any of that helps. Doing this podcast, building a studio, it takes a lot. So if you want to help support, check out our website. And the other thing that helps out a lot, if this episode spoke out to you, if you could share it, that makes such a big difference. Look, I'm not trying to make clickbait titles or anything. I'm trying to bring real world experience down from the automotive side. So by doing that, sometimes it gets a little hard for me to even advertise. I actually hate advertising, but I got to do it anyways. So what I really want to be able to do is share these podcasts in a way that's very genuine, and it really seems like it's hard to do that on these platforms. So again, if you want to share, an episode that spoke to you, that helps tremendously. So anyways, listen, thanks for listening. I say that a lot, but I really do mean it because our automotive industry is something that it's growing, it's getting better, the technology is getting better, the people are getting better, the information that's out there is getting better, and I'm just trying to help some of that flow through a little bit easier. So thank you for your interest in the Automotive Artistry podcast.